This is my third consecutive ultra short throw projector review, and the benefit of doing that is you can get a very broad range of experience very quickly. And I think as consumers, the marketplace can be confusing. We can look at all of the different ultra short throw projector options that are available, and there are a lot. Look at the spec sheets of all of them. Some of them look very, very similar. So we might think that they're all pretty much the same. But let me reassure you, I've only looked at 3 of them, and I can confirm that their picture performance can be really very different. So I'll put this down to the equivalent of food. We can have chefs that use very similar ingredients, and yet the resultant meals that they create can look and taste really rather different. And taste is really important here. We have to think about our preferences and taste to a very large degree. And it could seem like I have saved the best of the 3 until last, or maybe the best value of the 3 when we look at what the Formovie Theater appears to be offering for its price of £2,699. That is a price I saw on Amazon the day of shooting this video. And it's offering 4K resolution, not native, but using Texas Instruments DLP DMD technology, which I now know to be outstanding. There is 2,800 ANSI lumens of brightness from an RGB triple laser light source that's using the latest ALPD 4.0 plus technology that's said to improve contrast and color accuracy. And I am all for that, especially with the over 100% of Rec 2020 colour space being offered, which, to the best of my knowledge, far exceeds what even the very best TVs are capable of producing. There is a 20,000 hour lifespan for our light engine here, and the fact that it's an RGB laser triple laser array means we don't need a color wheel, so there's no filter in the light path as well, with no negative effects that can create, such as rainbow effect. There is support for HDR10, but also Dolby Vision, which makes me happy. And what also makes me happy being an audiophile is the sound for the Formovie is from Bowers and Wilkins. And this could, of course, just be a branding thing, except I spoke to somebody from Bowers and Wilkins off the record, and they told me they're really very proud of the sound quality that the Formovie Theater can produce. And they told me their goal was to create a product of its category with the best sound in its category, and I've got to love that as a design goal. Speaking of design, the Formovie is by far the most sleek and slimline of the 3 projectors I have here, and it feels the most British living room friendly in terms of its design. And I think it looks very soundbar-esque from the front and could easily pass as one. The rear is a little more interesting though. We have a pretty standard 3 HDMI inputs, one with EARC, 2 USB, a LAN, and an optical digital output. However, what is definitely not standard is the use of a C5 cloverleaf power socket. And I have to question, why do this? Why not just use an IEC the same as everyone else? And this is only really a situational problem for, I think, probably for my situation. And that's because the unit that was shipped to me came with a Schuko power cable. So I decided to just buy a C5 to an IEC adapter and use the same power cable that I'd used for all of the reviews, except the adapter didn't fit. And that's because the C5 power socket is recessed just that little bit extra into the back of the chassis, which looks very nice, but that only creates a problem because most C5 power socket power cables that you would buy in the UK have this kind of thicker outer surrounding, which means none of them are going to fit. Now, I did find one that fitted in the end, but this whole situation just raised a thing for me that I just want to pass on to the manufacturer, like a recommendation, is that if you're going to design a product that's going to force us to use something a little bit different, like a C5 power socket and not an IEC, then please at least include a power cable that's very long, because not everybody's situation is the same. I needed a long cable here to go around the, floor rising projector screen. So that'd be my recommendation. Don't include a short cable. Just give us a long one if you're going to force us to use something like this. And while I'm making a complaint of sorts, I also want to talk here about another one that I have, and that is for the focus of the Formovie. I found it very difficult at first to get the screen to focus well across the whole image. And really, it's the top 2 corners that we have to focus on. Excuse the pun. And the focus system of the Formovie is silent, which is different to every other projector that I've experienced before. So at first, I was pressing the remote control and I wasn't sure if anything was even happening. And I managed to get a nice focus across the image, but it felt like the top left corner in particular was just that little bit softer. But watching content, I couldn't really see anything about it, but I was conscious of it. So later on, I went back to see if I could do a better job. And later, the focus, as I've shown you on the screen, actually looked significantly better. So it seems to me like the focus of the Formovie seems to improve as the unit maybe warms up or maybe runs in, I'm not sure. Or maybe it was just my eyes. Maybe my eyes had improved. I'm really not sure. But I do want to balance this situation with a positive. The throw ratio of the Formovie meant that it's the only projector of the three here where the image could line up to the bottom of my floor rising AWOL Vision 120-inch screen. So it's the only projector out of the three that I have here that was actually showing me the full size of the image that I'd paid for with my screen. And that includes AWOL Vision's own 3500 Pro projector that's designed to go with this screen. So this is a minor thing really when this screen is as big as 120-inch, but it's not a minor thing. But it becomes a minor thing really because most of the content that we're going to watch, especially movies, the ratio changes all the time. So we're very rarely watching the full screen, but sometimes we are. So having the full screen that we've paid for is a big deal. Now, of course, you could just raise the height of the screen a little bit to solve this issue. It's really not a major thing, but I think it is a big positive for the Formovie Theater because it might help somebody with their installation of it. It might mean that they can have the screen that little bit lower and closer to the projector, and that might mean that they can have a larger screen in their space. I'm going to make a change here, and I'm actually going to talk about the sound quality before I talk about the picture quality, because that's definitely one of the big standout strengths of the Formovie Theater, and not just the audio quality. For me, it's the audio options, the extra options that are available. And I don't just mean the different sound modes, because all of the projectors here offered that, and really there was only one that I thought sounded best. And also not only the fact that Dolby Atmos sound is offered here, which of course will be pseudo Atmos, maybe from reflecting sounds around the room, but it can still be and was very effective. What I'm referring to is the audio delay settings, which seem to make little sense until you really think about it. And essentially our speakers are noticeably in front of our image. And there is an ever so slight lip sync audio delay that I could very easily fix. And this seems like a very small thing, except if you're sensitive to this, well, of course, every time you watch anything, you can see that audio or hear that audio lip sync delay. That will ruin everything that you watch. So being able to fix this is a small but very big thing. And then the Bowers & Wilkins part of the sound is definitely more than just a branding. The sound from the Formovie, I would say, sits exactly between the XGIMI Aura and the AWOL Vision 3500 because it's offering the same kind of fullness of sound of the Aura, which I really liked, but with more volume and the expansiveness of sound from the AWOL Vision. But I would say there was actually better resolution or clarity to the pseudo surround effects when the sound or the speakers reflecting sound around the room and we can hear a soundstage happening around us left to right and up at height. Sometimes the clarity of that I found to be just that little bit better than from the AWOL Vision. And interestingly, I've watched The Lord of the Rings with my two sons, actually all three of the extended editions with this projector setup, and as the Nazgul flew over the top of us I could hear the sense of sound from height. So that is extremely impressive when I think it's just stereo speakers really that were sat on my floor. So I think if you're planning to use this projector as a projector and a soundbar, so long as your expectations are reasonable, especially for bass, there isn't really any bass from this setup, then I think you will be happy here with the volume and the clarity. And I think you'll also be happy with the functionality of the Formovie. It's running on the Android TV 11 platform, so if you've seen this before, you will know what to expect in terms of the app availability from the Google Play Store. And that meant there is the same slight sluggishness to the menu system when you are streaming or playing media, which is not the end of the world, but it does affect the user experience some. I still prefer the user experience of an external Apple TV box. Although I must say the YouTube picture quality experience using the built-in app I found to be extremely excellent. But for other apps like Disney Plus, I found the external Apple TV box looked noticeably better for picture quality. So an external source for media streaming is still my recommendation. The overall projector menu system seemed a little different to me, with a few extra settings, some that made more or less sense to me than others, such as the projector brightness options. They are either viewing, dark or office mode. And why office and not bright? Well, I'm not sure office mode makes the projector brighter. It seems to just shift the gamma and colour to be more blue, to give the impression of a brighter, maybe more white image. So I found it's best to resist the temptation to change this and just keep the brightness set to viewing mode, as the gamma seems to track better, at least as best as I could tell just by eye. And of course, we all know, as good as this is, it's definitely not as accurate as a full measurement. But one thing that really stood out to me is the 11-point white balance controls, which is basic stuff for a TV, but not for a projector. And there is also a color CMS and color temperature adjustment. So if you're a picture accuracy purist, then the Formovie will appeal to you more than, say, the XGIMI Aura, which doesn't offer much in the way of calibration controls. So for me, the Formovie Theater is definitely a projector that would be worth hiring a professional calibrator to come in to get you the best picture quality possible. And that leads me nicely on to talking about picture quality. Some things here I really like, and some less so. And this is where my video title has come from, because for me it's like being in the past and the future at the same time, watching content on the Formovie Theater. And I want to start with my first impressions, because initially when I fired up the Formovie Theater and watched some Pacific Rim and Aquaman on 4K UHD disc, it felt to me like I was watching a JVC long throw projector. The way the image was balanced very nicely, very natural in the colour palette, and the image therefore looked very correct in a lot of ways. And it also had what I would call a deep image, one that's holding on to its black level, and contrast level may be at the expense of some highlights brightness. And to me, that is the projector really trying to maybe linear or accurately track the gamma curve or the brightness curve for HDR. That is just the impression I got from watching it. Then my second impressions were that the image reminded me of a very large plasma TV, because you could see really deeply into the image, or the picture just felt like it had a lot of depth to it, because the background information could be seen just as clearly as the foreground information. And then the way the image was presented felt just a little bit softer and a little bit more cinematic, more like how it does when you watch a movie at the cinema, or maybe on a JVC long throw projector. And I think there is a clue in the name here, Formovie. Then you can't miss the very nice and well judged and balanced colours, and the nice skin tones as a result, with very saturated colours at times in the blues and especially the reds and oranges. The reds in particular on Aquaman really stood out, and then the blues in the skies of the scenic shots from Lord of the Rings did also. And to me, I think this is where we are seeing evidence of that wider colour gamut. It's just reds that can have, more pop and saturation. And it was like a pastel-y blue in the skies of Lord of the Rings. It was just really kind of rich, just pastel actually, but just more saturated than I am used to. And for me, the colours from this projector are its big standout strength. They're very rich and always nicely saturated. And this is really where we are in the future, or the future is now, because this is a giant leap away from projection quality of old. SDR content from the Formovie is exceptionally good. The good black levels, contrast and rich colours meant that even straight out of the box, with just a little bit of minor tweaking, SDR looks fantastic on this projector. So if you watch a lot of SDR content, which let's face it is 90% of YouTube and still a lot of broadcast TV, at least here in the UK, anyway, the Formovie is excellent. And I've been particularly impressed how the projector manages highlights information. It seems to keep a lid on it nicely, so the image doesn't blow out very easily, even when you crank the contrast control up for a more dynamic picture. And HDR can look very good depending on the content. Play your very colourful demos from YouTube and they look fantastic because the colour saturation and the way the content is graded for a very high contrast look just really plays to the strengths of the Formovie. However, not all HDR and Dolby Vision content is made like that. Content that really benefits from the brightness like Avatar Way of the Water, or bright and colourful stuff like Encanto or Elements streamed from Disney+, both from my Apple TV box and the built-in app, the colour fidelity was great and the colours were always rich, and the colour detail of the image was fantastic because the highlights of the image are so well managed, and you can see perfectly the animation of the fire in Elements as an example. But there just wasn't enough brightness for that image to really pop off the screen like I have seen it do. I think the Formovie tracks the image accurately for the brightness curve, but that can lead to an image that doesn't seem as bright overall. But I've got to say, I do always and will always really love that sumptuous rich colours, and I feel like for the price the Formovie is offering a lot. It's offering a lot, or there's just a hell of a lot to like about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you've enjoyed the 3 reviews if you've watched all of them. If you've enjoyed this one, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you appreciate my take on projectors at the moment, but it's normally audio gear, if you appreciate my take on it, please consider subscribing to the channel.